right, welcome back. We are here for another episode of Rap and Reason podcast. I am one of your hosts, Dr. Jeremy C. McCool.
And I'm Earl Hopkins.
What's good, bro? Episode 18?
18, yes, sir.
18, man.
Life is good. I can't complain. I'm a dog dad now. So I'm like, and I pause for a minute because it's odd to say.
To say that
Because
you the dog father.
right, the dog father, bro. I never thought I would say that because I didn't grow up with dogs. I never dreamed of really having a dog, but your lady, you know this, your lady can influence you to make decisions you otherwise wouldn't think about or make if you had thought about it deeper. So she fell in love with his dog at a shelter here in Philly. It's a Parson Russell Terrier. Adorable little thing, man. My man Tony. So yeah, we adopted him, but he's a puppy, so we're training him. It's been absolutely stressful, but we're gonna get through it, bro. One treat at a time. That's all you can do. So yeah, how you been, bro?
Bro, I've been good. And you know what? I'm the more congratulations on being a dog father.
Of
Um,
course.
I'm low-key mad that we talked about this on the podcast now because my girl listens to the show and I just don't want her to think about getting no ideas because I look. She's also dog crazy now. I don't know,
Mm,
man. I don't know. This new dog trend is different. I didn't grow up with dogs either, and I'm gonna be honest. Like growing up, the way that people treat dogs now was not how people treated dogs when I grew up.
not at all.
So I think there's a generational divide there too. Like I had uncles who didn't even let dogs in the house, bro. Like
For
dogs were
real.
chained up outside. Like that was in the basement at most. Like
Yeah.
dogs wasn't even allowed in the rest of the crib. Like
hmm
so now how people are with dogs, I was like they,
OD with it.
they treat
Yeah.
them
It's
better than humans.
No, for real. I was about to say that. Like certain people like dogs, admire dogs more than they like people, to the point where they're treating them like kids. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like
Yep.
on a totally different level. Like how I grew up, like I didn't grow up around dogs, but people that I knew had dogs, like they're not letting them in the house. Like they'll be in the basement, but nobody can pet them or say hi to them. And also, we do a bad job. We, as in a lot of our folks, in training our dogs. So like I always think about this thing that Kevin Hart said where he was like, people will come to his house, they'll see his dog, they ask, does he bite? And then he'll say, like, he don't bite me. Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's
Like,
a fact.
that's how people, like, when I was around dogs, that's how it was. Like, you know what I mean? You always rolling the dice on that. So, this is a new experience. Hopefully, your girlfriend will, encourage you to live this life.
I was gonna say
Yeah.
I was gonna say I hope she skipped this part of the podcast episode.
Yeah.
Oh, hit fast forward right now.
Oh, man.
No ideas, but other than that, man, I've been pretty good. I really can't complain. Working, man. I decided that's why I'm in a hotel, as the people watching video can see. Yeah, man, I had to do a little breakaway, getaway, get some work done, get myself a little writing retreat. I do this periodically. I'll just break away for a few days, go off somewhere a few hours away, and
Mm.
to get some work done and reset. So,
What
yeah, been doing it
what
for the last couple
perfect
of years.
what perfect timing too. Like we're a few days removed, couple days removed from the presidential election. What a great time to break away from, like, get off the grid for a little bit. Tell me about like how you felt about just election day, or maybe your feelings after, the results with President-elect Donald Trump.
So, um, I could get up here and lie, but I won't. I
Okay.
people, I knew this was going to happen. So much so that people are texting me who would never text me,
Mhm.
man, you were right about this. Or like, yeah, you hit the nail on the head with this. Like, I can't say that I'm shocked. I'm really not. Uh, for numerous reasons. It just how this played out, how the campaign was run, um, the overall vibe of people right now. Yeah, it just the writing was on the wall for me. I honestly didn't think it would even be any closer than it was, you know. So
Mhm.
I wasn't shocked. Now, is it that doesn't make it any less crazy that he's president again, you know? It's
Mhm.
still like even though I wasn't shocked by it, it's just like, yo, we really got a president who got like 30 felonies. Like we like this is even wild on normal American standards, I will say. Like,
Hmm.
but at the same time, like I said, I think the writing was on the wall for me, just because of how the whole thing played out. So I'm not gonna say I was shocked, but at the same time, it's still crazy. Like, it's
Hmm.
still crazy, and some of the things that he has verbalized, put in motion, I think are definitely dangerous and can be detrimental. So, yeah. I mean, as a black man in America, our situations don't alter much, no matter who's in office.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, a lot of the we deal with a lot of the same issues regardless of who's the president. But there are some things that I think that he could dangerously impact. As far as
Hmm.
education goes, being a large one, um, and yeah, so it's gonna be a long ride in 4 years. It'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
Hmm.
But yeah, I can't say that I was shocked, and we can get more into that. But what did you think overall? Were you shocked by it?
Yeah. So I wasn't shocked necessarily by the result. I was more shocked at how widely um the victory took place. Like I was surprised uh how many more voters he garnered than Vice President Kamala Harris. Like that's the part that really kind of shocked me. I thought it was going to be a lot closer than it was. But when you look back at 2016, right, when he was first elected, and you look about or you think about how that 4 year span took place, I was hoping that America wouldn't make a similar decision or the same decision. You know what I mean? Especially with a campaign built on sensationalism, and when you have someone that's enamored with some of the things, some of the rhetoric he spread, like you said, it is dangerous, but it's also disheartening to know that so many Americans resonate with it. You know what I mean? That's the part for me that's not surprising either, but also just like really? Like that's where we're at in America, because I think a lot of people, especially black men and women, I think we had this idea that, America was going a certain direction following the Barack Obama's presidential administration. And we got slapped in the face in 2016, and this is another one just on the opposite side with this presidential race. So I mean, it's crazy, bro. I expect us as in Americans to go through another whirlwind of confusion, chaos, and dismay. That's really what I expect.
Mm,
And I expect those that align with certain ideals to have their voices amplified when in other years, maybe even other decades, they would have been silenced because they don't have a platform or someone backing them at the helm. But I just see it kind of going in that similar direction. And that part is like, I'm not scared. I'm not scared of anything, but I think that's something for all of us to kind of be concerned with, especially with with the people like having certain morals, ideals on the opposite end.
yeah, and I think that that's what one reason why things like this don't shock me is because I've never been in a position where I thought racism was getting better.
Hmm.
Never. So America has been America. I think that the difference between it is that sometimes media can convince you, or because you're in your own algorithm so much that you're not
Hmm.
seeing it. It's not as visual to you anymore. And sometimes we live in our own little bubbles and have our own networks of people who we mingle around with. So it's easier to forget about all of the black men incarcerated in this country and how we're like, you know what I mean? It's easy to forget about all the systems that are in place and how the wealth gap is still at just as high as it's been almost a century
Hmm.
ago, uh, with black people. So it's like I've never been under the illusion that racism was getting better. I think it's for me it's hidden more,
Hmm.
and I think that when you see a campaign like his it's alarming to people because people are like, well, no, people can't agree with that or resonate with his message.
Hmm.
But for me, it's just like, no, they do. They just can't say it out loud anymore because they'll get fired. Like nothing has
Right.
changed. Like people don't feel any different. It's
Hmm.
just a matter of, you know, if anything, he kind of ran on they're trying to silence us. Almost a revolutionary type of rhetoric of, they're silencing us, they're trying to, you know, they're forcing us to hire these people. He ran on a white people being oppressed,
Right.
that type of ideology. So when seeing that, it's like, yeah, a lot of people aren't going to come out and verbalize that, hey, I agree with what he's saying because
Mm,
it's taboo in certain circles. But
mm,
I've never been under the illusion that people felt any differently. So, like I said, I wasn't shocked by that. I will say, looking at the demographics of some of the people who voted for him, that's the only shocker.
yeah. Mm.
Um, that's a whole nother podcast episode. But
For sure. And allyship, it made me question allyship. Like, what is, and we talked about this off the pod, what does allyship really mean? Because, I actually worked election day. Everyone I talked to, you're right, you live in a bubble. Philadelphia is a bubble amongst other counties in PA. Obviously, like, PA went Republican and went red this election cycle. It barely went blue the last one. So obviously, like in Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, that's kind of a bubble. Even in Harrisburg, that's a blue bubble, right? So what you experience in Philly is not what you're going to experience necessarily in like various counties outside of it. So I think you're right. A lot of people kind of like they intermingle with certain people or talk to certain people and they have shared values, but then you go outside of it and you're like, this is a whole different world and perspective. And I think President-elect Donald Trump really fed into that. He again heightened certain issues that may not be as prevalent or as challenging as they may be because he wanted to feed that base. And also, we talked about them. When you break down the numbers, who voted for who, like those that were college educated voted one way, and those that aren't voted another way. And I think he is a masterful in aiding or like speaking to those people. And I think that's why we're here where we're at right now. So it's crazy, man.
yeah,
But all we can do is, sit back and pray. That's all you can do is hope for the best because the result is not going to change. We're here. You know what I mean?
absolutely, we're here, and for like I said, for me, it wasn't a it's like I said, it's not a shocker. It's not like this is a person who hasn't been president before,
Right.
in this country. I think that it's alarming to see the differences between all of the people who were running,
Hmm.
and to see, yeah, I don't know what our qualifications anymore for, you know,
Yeah. Or what our line is, because we're talking about literally a convicted criminal, like as president, bro. Like, I don't think I would ever say that in my entire life, but we are. Um,
and in the meanwhile, people in prison can't vote,
yeah.
which
Yeah.
uh is interesting. But at the same time, like I said, I'm as somebody, and I really don't even speak about my political stances much publicly,
Mm.
but I'm a registered independent, have been. And but with Trump, man, it's just like it's hard for me to understand the mindset of a Trump supporter. It
Mm.
it is, but
It's, yeah, especially if you're a certain demographic who he's vehemently like spoke out against, and then you still support him.
right.
That I can't wrap my head around, but God bless them. I wish them the best. I hope they get everything that they've voted for. That's all I can say.
We're gonna get something.
Gonna get
It's gonna,
some.
it's gonna be it's gonna be interesting for you. I will say that. Buckle up.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And as a journalist, it's crazy because I can't even voice my political views like publicly either. That's the part that's frustrating about the industry or just, but I think there's a bigger conversation to be had about America's view on women also, but that could be saved for a whole nother podcast. Because that's interesting. And it showed itself just when you mentioned qualifications, it showed itself at face value, like throughout the entire presidential run, in my opinion, based on the rhetoric from certain political figures and voices, endorsers.
yeah.
That's America.
Absolutely. And then I also that kind of brings us into one of our early topics. One thing
Mm,
I always say is, as a professor, I've had to grow to realize that I interact and have discourse with younger people more than probably any other field. There's
mm,
not too many people who speak to people in between the age of 18 and 25 more than professors do, who are older than that. So
mm,
So I have to realize that my viewpoint is a lot of times different than other people, and the way I'll discuss how young people feel will be a little bit skewed from other people because other people are taking their discourse off social media, and I'm taking
Mm,
mine off actual interactions I'm having with students regularly.
mm.
And when it comes to how politicians, in this case, we specifically discussed the Democratic candidate and the Republican candidate, which was Donald Trump, Kamala Harris in this election. The way that they utilized both music artists and influencers to me was interesting. How do you think that that played out, or do you think that that played a role in this election's outcome?
So I honestly, to speak candidly, rather like I don't think it made that big a dent. I don't think it would have mattered either way. Like if Vice President Kamala Harris went with Soul Child instead of Megan Thee Stallion, I think the result would have still been the same. But I think there's you have to ask yourself whether some like it dissuades a certain amount of voters based on that. Like especially the demographic that she kind of like lost essentially. I mean, she lost the election, but specifically some of the demographics that we thought she may have garnered, like white women, older white women, for example, white women voters, for example. Like maybe she would have garnered some more votes possibly if Cardi B wasn't up there, like introducing her on a platform or Megan Thee Stallion wasn't twerking in endorsing like Vice President Harris. Like, there's so many things to think about. I think it actually did more of a disservice, to be honest, to the artists themselves a little bit. But I mean, who's to say, really? I don't really know. What I can say is I've never seen a potential like a presidential candidate go as far as to bring like those kind of artists like a Glorilla on as an endorser or supporter of theirs. I think what their goal was trying to garner like young black women, but I think that was like probably a mistake. I think on Vice President Harris's part. I think she could have really squared her focus on like other demographics of need, especially given like their their population with the as voters, like where they stand as voters. You know what I mean? But I mean, what do you think?
I would agree. I think that Vice President Harris, it's not that she used the wrong celebrities to endorse her. I don't think there was any issue with the people who necessarily endorsed her. I think the misstep was how she utilized them.
Mm,
I'm gonna give you an example. When Barack Obama ran for president, he utilized a lot of hip hop artists and
mm,
galvanized. He was one of the first people to really tap into hip hop artists, like in to that magnitude.
mm,
And let's talk about Jeezy. When Jeezy endorsed Barack Obama, he used a completely separate song. He made a song about the campaign.
mm,
He performed a song that was about the campaign. I think that's drastically. He didn't have Jeezy go up there and rap "Trap or Die" at a
mm.
rally,
Right.
and I think that is a difference. Now, I think that the optics of that are differently. Like that those are different optics than and I think the same thing could have been applied for when she did bring up artists who aren't necessarily typically people who I'm trying to find a better way of saying this, but people don't necessarily value their opinions on issues because they're
Mm,
not known for speaking on issues.
right.
So, nobody's heard Glorilla's stances on a lot of different social issues. Nobody's heard, or her views on politics. So I think having an artist like that make a song that speaks to your campaign
Mm,
is one thing. Having them come up and perform the ratchet song that they got to blank out 50 of the words.
mm.
Eh, I don't.
Yeah.
So I think that the way that they utilize celebrities, I think wasn't impactful, and I think it could have been done better. And I think on the flip side, when you look at what Donald Trump did, I think that he really galvanized. he tapped into where he knew his potential base would be, and he really tapped into even male-based platforms,
Mm,
not just because the thing is, um, Kamala was going to get women, black women anyway.
hmm
So I don't think that tapping into Glorilla, I don't think that enhanced it. I think that was going to be the outcome anyway. I think tapping into something of the other avenues to get people, I think would have been what could have been more beneficial. When I looked at, you know, whether we like it or not, man, there's a YouTube sector that has been
mm,
untapped, and I think that Trump did a good job of tapping that specific
mm,
demographic. That manosphere, black, not even
yeah.
just black, but man YouTube channel sector where the highest of them is the Joe Rogans and
hmm
those platforms, but there's a lot of little other ones under there that he latched onto and let his presence be known within YouTube channels, podcasts, all of those. So I think that I just don't think that that was done in the best way during the campaign. I think that could have been better.
mm,
Like I said,
yeah.
would it have made a completely different outcome? I don't know. I think that it would have. I think it could have though.
I mean, I think I agree in the fact that like Trump, it seemed like he was more strategic, and he said like, "Yo, my son, he would list out these people, and I would just go to these podcasts like a Theo Vaughn, a Andrew Schultz for Flagrant, or a
Right.
Joe Rogan, as you said, and getting endorsements from Elon Musk and UFC CEO or whatever, Dana White. You know what I mean? Like it kind of makes sense. That's his audience, and I think that's where Vice President Harris kind of lost the momentum going into it is that age range between 18 to 30, especially male voters. I think because they're so enamored with these figures that I just named, I think that's where she kind of lost her grip. Um, and so I agree that could have made a dent. I don't think like having Glorilla, if she has Sexy Red on there, I don't think it's really moving the needle because again, she already has black women in her bag. You know what I mean? But she could have went another direction. And I'll be honest, I watched the videos from the people like a Theo Von, Andrew Schultz, and a Joe Rogan who said we reached out, we offered an opportunity to speak with Vice President Harris, and nothing came to fruition. So it seems like she actively avoided it, maybe, or she just didn't see that high a value within it. But when the decision or the race is lost by 5 million votes, you got to ask yourself, like, okay, there has to be something else, and there's clearly other demographics she maybe didn't tap into, or that Trump just garnered far easier, and that's ultimately what led to his presidential election.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that those those I think people underestimate the the influence that podcasters and YouTubers truly have because they're
hmm
speaking to people weekly, sometimes daily, depending on the shows,
hmm
and they've had some of these people listening to them for 4, 5, 10 years,
Yeah.
so people value their opinions more than they're gonna value an artist who has a song that they like.
hmm
So I think that people also need to go back to the drawing board of who's actually influential and who's just popular
Right.
because I don't think they're the same.
No, they're not the same. Like I'm not personally like no offense, I'm a fan of her music. I'm not gonna listen to Glorilla in any of her political stances. Like that's personally not what I'm doing. Vice President went to Shannon Sharp. It was cool, but like again, I don't think that really serviced her campaign really. You know what I mean? And also people underestimate, given the age range I talked about, 18 to 30, how many people vote for presidential candidates because they think to themselves, oh yeah, I can have a beer with that guy. People underestimate just some of the I guess how low a bar could be for certain voters. And I think that's something again she could have tapped into. But yeah, the musical component is interesting given what we seen from Obama and Young Jeezy, bruh. So that's crazy. I totally forgot about that until you just bring it up. Yeah.
Yeah, man, it was done differently. It was way more of
Mhm.
a calculated move. You know, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just, hey, let me grab these celebrities and use them real quick. It was
Mm-hmm.
much more calculated. And let me, and to be fair, as we wrap up the political segment, this is a music show, but we're tapping in. We're talking about the music elements
Right.
of what happened with this
Mm-hmm.
election. But I also say too, just to be fair, there are other reasons why people have issues with the current administration. So I know everybody wants to make it seem like everybody who wasn't in support um, is just dumb. But
Mm-hmm.
to be fair, there are current issues that people have with the
Mm-hmm.
administration, whether you're talking about Gaza, whether you're talking about Ukraine, whether you're talking
Mm-hmm.
about um, the economy. There are real grievances that people have with the
Mm-hmm.
current administration. So, with that being said, I think that's not to say that the next option is going to be any better, but
Yeah.
there are real grievances that people have. I do acknowledge those too, but I think that when we're talking about bringing in hip hop into the mix,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't hear from the hip hop artists that people really respect as intellectuals.
That's crazy. Like I would have loved to hear from like a Kendrick Lamar, J. Cole. I would have loved to hear from, and I know, well, we have Black Thought in the Roots at Kamala's rally here in Philadelphia. So by virtue, I guess that's an endorsement or of
Yeah,
support.
but
But
that
like, you know what I
but the
mean?
thing is, the youth aren't tapped in with Common or Black Thought. You know,
Mm,
they don't have the 18 to 30-year-old crowd, unless you're a true hip hop fan,
mm,
like I am, like you are. Like
mm.
we listen to those type of acts. But
Right.
the standard young person is not listening to them the same way that they're listening to a Kendrick Lamar, a Chance the Rapper, a J. Cole. Um, and like I said, I think that
Mm,
those artists were hesitant and didn't endorse her for some of the reasons I just mentioned, you know?
mm.
So I don't yeah. So I think it's not just having somebody who's popular, it's having somebody who really is influential and that people respect their opinions,
And who's really tapped in? Absolutely.
who's really tapped in with the culture. So hope everybody keep your head up, man. I know it's been a weird couple days,
It
but
has, it has.
but we always come out on the other side. Just
100%. I mean, keep your head up, people. We
keep
got
keep
this.
your keep your head up, man. On another note, this is gonna be a quick album review for us. Okay.
Might be the quickest.
This might be the quickest. Lil Uzi, your boy,
Right.
has an album out called Eternal Atake 2.
Yes.
What you
Um,
think?
oh, I'm first. Man.
All right.
Yo, like I said, for me it's very simple. I don't like this at all. I was talking to my boy Zay about this too, and he tried to crystallize it for me. He tried to make me feel a lot better about it. He said, Earl, like the back half of this album is better. And I would agree. That's the only thing I can say about it is I would say after She Stank, because that's a real song about a woman companion not being hygienically intact. You feel me? Like, so he didn't want to like romance her. That is what that song is. But after that, I would say, um, I think the album is more manageable. Like, I'll say, let me just name the good stuff. So I like Mr. Chow. I like Lift 'Em Up. Those are classic styled like Uzi songs that I like. It reminds me of like Love Is Rage days. And some of the mixtapes that like really and features that really like blew Uzi up. You know what I mean? From North Philadelphia to the world, essentially. I like Chill Bay. I don't know. I like that. I just like the melodic element of it is really soothing. It's just good music, you know what I mean? That you could play really on any occasion, but even the right occasion, you could probably listen to it. And Space High, like I said, it reminds me of like Love Is Rage days. To me, that's peak Uzi, especially Love Is Rage 2. I think that's peak Uzi. I think for me, this album is indicative of a musical decline from Uzi. It's the same
Hmm.
thing we've been listening to since probably 2017, and it hasn't really blown me away because Again, it's just a regurgitation of songs, styles, flows that I've already heard from him before. Not to say that there's anything wrong with still doing something that works for your fan base, but for me as a consumer, like having lived my college years listening to a Uzi and now in adulthood and seeing that he's doing the same thing with the same kind of like minimal like messaging behind it. And you know what I mean? It doesn't really, there's not much protein on it. Like there's not much like nutrition when I listen to his music. That's the best way I could kind of frame it. It's just empty calories, and that's what this album is for me. I think the first Eternal Take is a lot better. I think it's a lot more focused, and we're going to get into it. But it shouldn't be a surprise that Uzi almost made an apology to his fan base after releasing this album, because I think what he understand is that like, yo, it's impossible for us to really accept this as like a focused Uzi because it's just so unfocused, especially the first half of it, which to me, I'm not going to call it unlistenable, but I'll probably never go back to it personally.
That was a good breakdown. I'm just gonna just say garbage. I I don't have no eloquent way to say it like how you said it. I don't like anything. The only thing I
Mm,
have to say that I liked about it is the production. I do think there was
mm,
good production on the album. I do like the production in the second half more, as you said. But um, yeah, man, this just isn't my style of music.
mm,
And I have to accept that, but and it's mostly because of the lack of lyrical substance, like you mentioned.
mm,
There isn't much like I didn't leave with anything from this. Like as far as like who you are, what you stand for, what are you trying to tell me? Like I don't
yeah.
think I got anything from it. And it also doesn't even sound like anything that I want to listen to out and about either. So it's
Mm.
not even like it's like a bunch of amazing club songs on here for me. So it's I just yeah, this isn't my type of music.
Mm.
Yeah, no, nah, not at all. So that yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty much my breakdown right there, bro.
Bruh, the
It,
short is there. You're right.
I think this might be the
Yeah.
shortest review I've ever done. I
Yeah.
just there is some good production on here though. I will say that I do like some of the production. It's just the vocals, the emo style of vocal
Mm.
alongside the meaningless bars. It just doesn't move me.
Yeah.
But I can understand why kids would like this.
I can't even
I
understand that.
wasn't that type of kid who would like this, but I can understand why some other, these new kids are different than my kids were. We wouldn't have listened to Uzi, but I can understand why this new generation of kids would, bop around to this, but it's not my type of music.
I don't even think, and I'm willing to say that I don't even think it's the best version of the emo rap like that we're accustomed or what's even currently out. Like I will listen
Mm,
to a Yeet more than I listen to a Uzi. Not to say that they're the same artist or that much similar, but I think the production that they really like take hold to or really rap over, it's not that separate. And I think there's other artists that occupy that subgenre that are doing it at a higher level. And I think it's almost obvious. Like I don't understand how kids could like listen to this. And we're talking kids like people that are like probably 5 years younger than me, like realistically. I can't see them listening to this. And again, I was 18, 19 listening to Uzi. So it's not like I'm completely outside of the realm of understanding. It's just like this music just ain't it, bro. Like it's just not it. And I think we have to really think about where Uzi is musically. I know we're a year removed from one of the biggest hip hop songs of the year, and I just want to rock. Like they play for those that are in Philly or have been to an NBA basketball arena. Period. They're
crazy.
playing this every like on the hour, like by the hour, because it gets
Absolutely.
kids amped up. So I get that part,
Yes.
but like to listen to a full project by the current Uzi that we're seeing, the pink tape Uzi to this, I don't get it, bro. I don't get it.
Yeah, nah, I don't get it. I will
Mm.
say I've seen that. I just want to rock go crazy. I've seen it in
Crazy.
Sixer games. I've seen it.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I've seen it anywhere where there are children that they're getting up and losing their mind when that song. That he
Losing it.
made a youth anthem, and I
Yeah.
have to salute him for that because yeah, that song resonated differently.
Mm,
But at the same time, like I said, I'm also a few years older than you, so like I missed this wave.
mm,
Like by the time Uzi's popped off, I was grown, so
yeah.
I wasn't trying to hear it.
Mm,
Like I said, he had some cool songs that to me were okay, but it was
mm,
never I never fully understood the hype of a Lil Uzi to that degree. So
mm.
yeah, but like I said, at the same time, uh, he also was dressed like Merlin Manson. So I also wasn't going looking for it either.
The insult to Marilyn Manson because I think Uzi cannot dress at all, bro. Like we talked about this, bro. Like that's an insult. But it's
Both
fine.
saying Merlin
Mm,
Manson dressed better than Uzi is crazy.
yeah, and it's the truth. Like I probably
That's
ask any
wild.
Marilyn Manson fan. I'm not one, but ask them.
Let me tell you, I met a Merlin Manson fan. Let me tell you, I had a colleague.
Huh?
I'm not gonna put her on blast.
Mm,
I do have a colleague though. And I remember she told me, this is hilarious. I don't think she listens to this podcast, so I don't even mind telling the story. It's hilarious. But she told me, she's like, "Hey, I'm going, me and my family are going to a concert." And I was like, "Oh, okay, that's what's up. Who y'all going to see?" And I saw the hesitation there. And I was like, "What? Like, who is it?" And she was
mm,
like, "You're gonna judge me." And I was like, "Nah." I was like, "Who is it?" So now my mind is like, I don't know what artist you're gonna.
yeah.
When she said Merlin Manson, I was like, oh, I said, I've never met a Marilyn Manson fan in real life. So, and I mean, I probably have and just didn't know they were Marilyn Manson
I
fans.
probably
Like,
avoided one, to be honest.
but to be honest, she doesn't fit the mold. So that's what lets me know that like
Uh,
it's a lot of people who may have been dressed crazy in high school or something who listen to Marilyn Manson. They're
mm,
still listening to his music. They just are grown adults and professional now. So I was
that's
like,
true.
yeah, no, that blew my mind. That was like she did not fit the criteria of a Marilyn Manson fan to me. I was like, that's your bag. I was like,
Yeah.
and the craziest thing I said was, I was like, you mean like Lucifer, Merlin Manson? Like I probably could have gave another. I was like Lucifer, like Satan, Merlin Manson.
Yo.
She was like, you don't
Yeah.
have to say it like that. I was just like, I'm just saying, like that's what I think of when I think of Merlin Manson. Like
Yeah. Yeah. I've never heard a Marilyn Manson song by choice, at least. I can't even name you one, bro. Like, I
I
don't.
could name I only could name one because it was in the soundtrack of what was it? It was a John Wick. It was a song that like called "We're Killing Strangers." Crazy enough.
Oh, okay. Wow.
But
That,
I remember it came on and I would remember thinking like, man, this is one of the craziest songs I've ever heard. And I remember Shazamming and being like, Marilyn Manson, yeah, that's on brand.
yo.
It's on
Hey,
brand.
those artists had a hold on the early 2000s, bro. Like, people had posters of this man, him and Nelly, bro. They probably
That's a
sold the
wild
most
combo.
posters.
That's a
They probably sold the most posters, bro.
that's a
Like,
wild combo.
yeah.
Marilyn Manson and Nelly. That is hilarious. No, you're not lying though.
Yeah. And who?
And Bieber.
Oh, of course. Bieber, Rihanna for, you know what I mean, for my gents, bruh. Of course. Like that's like you gotta expect those type of things. And if you're a country girl, Tim McGraw, bro. Probably Tim McGraw.
But we
And
got
Nelly. Probably probably both in the same room for all I know. Yeah.
bro, the funniest thing about this is we just get like I'm over here thinking like we can't name this podcast episode Marilyn Manson and Nelly. Like that.
No, we can't. And we can't name it Killing Strangers. I know that for
Oh,
a
well,
fact.
that is for certain. We would not be naming
Uh
it that. That would not be the title of this here podcast episode. That is crazy.
oh man.
Yeah, but no, but you just never know. Moral of that story, you just never know who listens to who. Like,
Yeah.
because I was like, yo, I don't know what I envisioned Marilyn Manson fans to look like. I just assumed that they just had like a bunch of face tattoos and
Yeah.
look depressed. I don't know. I
It
guess
had nacho cheese on their shirt. That like nacho cheese stains, bro. I just envision that. Like I don't know
why
why.
nacho cheese?
And Mountain Dew in their gut. Like, you know what I'm saying? Or some Red Bull. I don't
This
know.
is the
I
most
got an
random
imagination.
description.
I got an imagination, man.
Bro, you put that together. That's different.
Speaking of strange killers, let's go on to a Biggie Smalls is ready to die. Let's what a smooth transition, bruh.
That's a wild
Yo.
transition.
Bro, it's poetic. We didn't even time that, y'all. We just
No, we
look at
didn't,
that.
bro. Ready to die. The next album review is definitely ready to die. That's crazy.
Bro,
Um,
how do you feel about this classic album, bro? This is another throwback review, man. How do you feel about Notorious B.I.G.'s debut album? Landmark debut at that.
Yes, landmark debut album. It's been out for 30 years. In September was the 30th
Crazy.
anniversary of Ready to Die by Notorious
Mm,
B.I.G. And man, let me tell you, this album is a classic if there ever was a hip hop
mm,
classic. This one is high on the list. It's not in my top 5 hip hop albums, but it's definitely in my top 20. It might be top it might inch towards top 10, top 15 to me. But
yeah.
it's up there, man. There are some classic songs on it. I think it's a very versatile album.
Mm,
And it's one of those that has it really showed Biggie's range as an artist, and it really showed off his lyrical abilities and storytelling throughout this album. There are some songs on here to me that are some of the best storytelling records in hip hop history. When I think about "Warning" being one of my favorite storytelling rap songs, just because of how
mhm.
vividly he told the story. "One More Chance" being a smooth classic record that is always gonna stand the test of time. It's just one of those albums that just has it's not a lot of wasted space on it. It's one of those albums that is a landmark in hip hop history for me. And yeah,
Mm,
man, there's a lot of songs on here that I love. One More Chance, Warning, uh, you got to say Juicy, classic hip hop
yeah,
song. Just one of those songs that is one of the songs you think about when you think of hip hop,
for sure.
being Juicy. Big Papa, another smooth classic. And I like this
Mm,
album too because it goes from smooth record to rugged, rough street
mm,
record, and it does so effortlessly to me. Machine Gun Funk being another classic. Like, it's this one is not it's not a lot of songs on here that I don't like. And
mm.
and one song that I think sticks out to me the most on this album, Suicidal Thoughts, man.
Yeah, let's talk about it.
What did you think about that record when you first heard it?
So like at first, when I first listened to this album, like as a teenager, I didn't really think much of it at the time. I think I wasn't primed or ready for this type of record. Like at first glance, you're like, oh, okay, this is just another kind of like moody, dark, like Biggie record among many that are on this song. It kind of just fits in, right? Like a glove. But when you really dig into the lyrics, you're like, hold on, bro. Like this dude, Biggie, he was probably 20, 21 making this album. He was this vulnerable in this on this record as you can be, like, especially during this time because it was rarely common, or was uncommon. So yeah, like I love it, and I love that he almost talks about like this subject in a way that the average man, especially at this time, could really comprehend it and still enjoy it. I think that's like something that I really took away from the project. What about you?
Absolutely, man. When I first heard Suicidal Thoughts, I was young, probably too young to be listening to a song called Suicidal Thoughts, to be honest. But
Mm,
I was a hip hop fan at a very, very young age. I was digging into some of these albums. And I remember when I first heard this, it was just unlike anything that I had heard before. And I think that hearing, it was so detailed, so vulnerable, such a um transparent. I'm not even gonna say transparent because I don't even know if he wrote the story from a place of actually being in a state or if he wrote it just,
mhm.
he really just showed off his songwriting ability and just wrote a story. But either way, it was, you never really hear songs about suicide. Now you do, but
Yeah.
at that time, it was unheard of for an artist to make a song like Suicidal Thoughts. And I think
Mhm.
that it really shows off how gifted Biggie was as a songwriter, and how he can really bring you into the pain and emotions that a person can feel in that mind state. So yeah, man, I think that song is one that I use in my classes today. I use that one in my socially conscious hip hop class when we talk about mental health and hip hop and how hip hop has spoken about mental health
Mhm.
issues such as depression, anxiety, depression. And I think that this is one where even though he doesn't necessarily use those terms, back then you didn't have a lot of artists who would use the terminology of depression or anxiety or
Yeah.
mental health or any of that.
Mhm.
They didn't use that vernacular, but they were still
Mhm.
expressing those same emotions, just as artists in other genres such as blues were doing prior to that. So I think
Mhm.
it's yeah, man. I think this is one of those albums that I think it has stood the test of time. It's aged well. Some of these songs you still hear out. Like you'll still hear One More Chance get played at a
For
function.
sure.
Like you'll still hear Big Papa get played. Like I think that
Mm,
this album aged really, really well. Which usually lets you know that it's a, it's a solid project. And I know that right now is not a optimal time to shout out Diddy, but I will say
mm,
he did his thing on this. The foresight and of using some of these samples on songs like a
mm.
Juicy and kind of getting Biggie to step outside of his typical gangster rap bag and make
Yeah,
some of these softer songs, I think was a nice touch. So
for sure. And sprinkling them in like in sequencing them the way he did, because again, they're sandwiched in like some of these more deeply personal gangster, like kind of hard hitting records, right? Like, but they fit in seamlessly. Like that's the part that really shows, like, has a masterful touch for me is like the production itself, fire. And this is East Coast, like, hip hop that we're talking about that's 30 years old. While it sounds like that, right? Like it has remnants of that time period. It's a classic sound and it hits just right on the right musical notes for it to still have that lasting sting. Like if I introduce this album to somebody who was 18 years old, I guarantee you they'll still find enjoyment out of it in some way or another. Maybe not, who knows, whatever. But the point is, like, this is a certified classic for those reasons, because it has that timeless feel and sound to it. um and you can go back to a suicidal thoughts, for example, like I did in reviewing this album, and say to yourself, I usually would skip this song, but this hits harder for me than it did when I first heard it maybe a decade or 15 years ago. So yo, you're right. You got it right on the money. This is like a classic album. This is one of my maybe top. This is maybe a top 20 album. And I know that like may sound crazy to diehard Biggie fans, but this is so much music that hits me a lot harder given my age. But like you can't deny the mastery of this project, and the production on it, man. It's incredible.
yeah, and I would agree. I think that it's also your age is going to play a role and what you typically will put in your top 20. Now, I will say I can't put it fully on that because there are some songs that are in my top 10 that are older, that are
Hmm.
in 90s albums, but at the same time, um, we resonate with the messaging a little differently when it's
For sure.
when it came out when you were coming of age. So there's
Hmm.
going to be certain records that are going to resonate with me more. And for me personally, as somebody who is gravitates to more um conscious pro-black messaging, there's
Hmm.
going to be a lot of albums in that realm that fall above this album to me. Um,
Hmm.
but like I said, still a masterful album, still one of the greatest debut hip hop albums for sure.
Yeah.
And yeah, man, gone too soon, man. When you're talking about Biggie and Pac, man, it's really crazy to see how skilled they were at such a young age.
Hmm.
Even when you're talking about some of the artists who are still alive, like a Nas, like when you think about the fact that Nas was 20 when Illmatic dropped, like it's just crazy to imagine that they were that profound
Hmm.
in their thinking and masterful in their lyricism at such a young age. And same thing for Biggie and Pac it's amazing to see, and it's kind of like when you look at some of the newer artists, it'd be like, shame on
Hmm.
you because you're
Yeah.
you're 30 and trash.
You feel me? Yeah, like, and it's even wilder to think about and reflect on the fact that like Nas in eighth or ninth grade, he dropped out of school. You know what I'm saying? Is for him to have not only just the way he articulated himself, but the fervor in which he had, like the fire in which he did it, like it, bruh,
That's
it's crazy, dog. It's
That's the
crazy.
same thing that I played. It ain't hard to tell for my students
Yeah.
about a little over a week ago, and one of my students said the same thing. He was he was like, it's crazy that he was this young and had a vocabulary like this because he was like, I couldn't even imagine myself putting together words in this way. Like
Hmm.
he was that young. He was like he's younger than I am now. So like
Right.
even one of my students was able to think that when listening to It Ain't Hard to Tell all of these years later,
Hmm.
almost 30 years later. And yeah, man, some of these artists, were They're really just musical and lyrical geniuses. Like, and
Seriously.
when you take some of these artists and you actually, if you just print out their, that's to me what lets me know that there's a artist who is a really great lyricist. If I could take your rap and print it out and show it to somebody in who's a poet or an English professor or any of these
Mhm.
people, and they could read it and still think it's profound without hearing you rap it, to me, that's another level of
It's
lyricism.
different. It's
And
different.
yeah, it's completely that's what lets me know that you're a great storyteller, and it doesn't even matter how that story is being consumed. It's you're just that great of a writer, and I think Biggie was that great of a writer for sure.
Absolutely. And he had the voice, he had the swag, he had the production behind him. It's just like he was the complete package, in a lot of ways. And I think that's why we still revere him as heavily as we do. We go back to his music for reference. Like Life After Death, there's a double album and probably one of my favorite double albums ever. You know what I mean? And a lot of people's favorite double album. I'm not even a big double album fan. I think we should no, I don't. I think if
I'm
you
with
just
you.
shrink it down, yeah, like just shrink it down, dog. Like, but
I'm
you
not a
know,
double album fan for rap.
not rap, yeah. I can't what who else does double albums? Like R&B artists? I don't know who else does.
I'm trying to think. I feel like was Thriller a double? Was that technically a double album?
Ooh, that's a good question. Cause didn't it have an A and B side or
I
something?
think
I
it
don't
did
even
because it
know.
was long. So that's why I'm like, I guess you wouldn't consider that a double album though. I mean, maybe,
Yeah. I
but
don't
it,
know.
yeah, I don't know if that falls under it, but yeah, no, I'm not the largest fan of.
Nah, like Blueprint 2, like if you would have put that into one album, it would have been really good. Like it was still solid, but
Yeah, even something like All Eyes on Me, like an album. I'm a big Pac fan, of course, but even All Eyes on Me, I think I think that could have been split up.
there was some fluff. There was some things
Yeah,
I skipped. I still love All Eyes on Me. But if they would have cut it down, trimmed it, just trim the fat. That's just how I see it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
The listener can get fatigued a bit.
right. And I don't know if he was, but and a lot of rappers historically have done that to get out of record deals. You know, I mean, let's say
Yeah.
they're signed to a 3 album deal. A lot of times they will put out a double record to count as 2 albums to get them out of their current contract too. So that's
Mm,
another component of it of why some artists would drop double disc albums in order to fulfill record label obligations, if
yeah.
you will. But yeah, no, I usually there's rarely been any times where I've heard one and been like, this is all fire. It's usually gonna be a lot of skippable songs, even from the greatest acts who have put them out.
Right.
There's usually gonna be some stuff that I skip.
That's a fact. And speaking of albums, like among our legends, like Biggie and Tupac, who do you feel has the strongest catalog? I feel like Tupac's is has an advantage because he just came out with more music, but that doesn't necessarily mean his catalog is stronger. What is your views on that?
Now, let me preface this with I am biased. I'm a pop guy.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I think that Biggie put out more polished albums,
Mm,
but I think Pac put out more meaningful albums.
mm,
And with Biggie only having two and Pac having a larger catalog,
mm,
I don't think I think Me Against the World is a more meaningful album than either one of Biggie's albums. I
mm,
think that it's more heartfelt and that doesn't necessarily and it also just I guess depends on what you consider better,
mm,
For me, better it means more impactful for me. And for that, I will say Tupac. But I will say that I think that Biggie put out more polished albums as far as not, concise,
mm,
not a lot of fluff in there where it's just like it's not as many skippable songs. Most of Pac's albums have skippable songs.
mm,
But so that's what I would say Biggie put out more polished albums, but I would say
mm,
that when you're talking about overall discography, I got to give it to Pac just because of the amount of music he put out. By
mm.
the age of 25, he had, I don't even know how many albums. He probably had what, six maybe,
Yeah, 5 or 6,
five
like
or
while
six
he was living. Yeah,
while he was living, and then put out a massive hits dropped after he passed away. People don't even realize Hail Mary dropped after Pac's death.
yeah.
there were amazing hit records that really are like landmark Pac records that released after he passed away. So, um,
100%.
I think when
Yeah.
you talk about overall just um songs, I'm going Pac. But if you go who have more polished albums, then I'll go Big. I think Big's albums are just extremely polished.
Yeah, and I think like again, we only saw two albums from them, and they're both like great albums.
True.
So you can only imagine how that trend would have gone, especially with the rise of Bad Boy Records like throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s. You would imagine that it would still be he would still create like some really polished records. But
And
for me, I agree with you. Like for me, I'm a Tupac guy too. Um I don't, and I'm willing to say this, dog. I don't care. Like, I don't think either one of Biggie's albums, I don't think for me, he has an album better than Me Against the World. People will argue with that all day, but for me, Me Against the World to me is a perfect conceptual album. I can listen to every single second of that album and I still feel that same feeling that I had when I first heard it in
right.
full. So with that in mind, that kind of like ends the conversation for me there, but I'm open to it, obviously, because Biggie was great. I just think I'm more of a Tupac fan innately. So I always gravitated to Me Against the World, All Eyes on Me, and Don Columinati, The 7 Day Theory. Like, even in death, bro. Changes is one of my favorite Tupac songs
Fact.
ever, bruh. And he died after that song was released. You know what I mean? So yeah, it's tough. It's tough, but I'm going with Tupac.
Yeah, I gotta go. I gotta go Pac, man, because when
Mm.
you talk about Me Against the World, to me, it's just it's such a powerful album,
Hmm.
and some of my favorite hip hop songs of all time are on the album. Like So Many Tears is one of my favorite hip hop songs,
Yes.
period. You know what I
Yes.
mean? Dear Mama is one of the greatest hip hop songs ever written, period. You know what I mean?
Ever.
Like, and when you're talking about some of those songs, it's hard to compare um club records and all of that with what
Mhm.
Pac was doing. Pac was so much so much bigger than that. And that's not to minimize Biggie to being a club record guy because he has some meaningful records too,
For
but just
sure.
not to the degree of a Pac. Like Pac's message was a lot more profound
Hmm.
and revolutionary even. Um, than most of his peers. It's just and
Hmm.
that's why even all of these years later, Pac is still revered in that same way, in a different light than other artists. When you talk about Tupac,
Hmm.
people usually have emotions tied behind it because they remember the first time they listened to "If I Die Tonight." You know what I'm saying? Like those type
Literally.
of songs. You never forget when you first heard it and how it made you feel. And I think Pac
Hmm.
was good at making you feel something.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, yeah. So I'm a Pac guy. So that's why I
Yeah.
started it by saying
Yeah.
like I'm biased. Like Pac is to me the most probably the most important rapper of all time to me. So,
Mm. I would
and
agree.
which is saying a lot to somebody who is like with an artist who passed that young. It's crazy to say, but to me he's the most important rapper. I always say I'll say Jay-Z is the best rapper of all time just because of the longevity and the amount
Hmm.
of bodies of work. But
Yeah.
we're talking about the most meaningful, the most impactful rapper.
I think it's Tupac.
It's got to be Pac. It's got to be Pac, man. And
Yeah.
which is why Pac is revered in that way.
Absolutely. When you're a man that died almost what? He died in 96 or almost 30 years ago, and you still have murals of you plastered not only throughout the states but throughout the entire world, and people still talk about you in reverence. Like that says so much about your legacy that it transcends even continental lines. You know what I mean? So
Absolutely.
yeah, he's incredible, man.
Yeah, man. Pac is that's a he's a once in a lifetime talent. Like
Absolutely.
you don't get Pacs often, and there are other rappers like that. Pac is a one of one in what he stood on, and then also just his voice and his presence in hip hop. I think is just completely unique. But and like I said, there are artists today that I think are going to be revered in that same way. Um, most really Kendrick and Cole, I think are going to be looked at differently when we go
Mm.
when you people dig back. I think those are this going to be this generation's like people are like this song changed my life and this song
Yeah.
got me through what I was going through. They're going to be that for the next generation. But um, yeah, man, I think, but it's also crazy to think about it, man. It's unfortunate that you have to die to get your flowers.
Ain't it? That's crazy. Yeah.
I always tell people like if DMX had died after his third album dropped, he'd be looked at the same way.
Mm.
But
Mm.
because he lived long enough for people to see what they viewed as his decline and all
Yeah.
of that, he doesn't get looked at. But if he had died after those first two albums, number one albums that dropped the same year, and then
Yeah.
I can't remember what that third album is, the Sympathy.
Mm.
But after the third album, I mean, his first three albums amazing, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and a lot of heartfelt music in those too. So I feel like if he, you know, a lot of times it's unfortunate that you got to die to get your flowers right away.
It is. Even if like we can play that game all day. I don't want I don't want to be morbid though.
I
Like,
right.
but shoot, if 50 Cent, like God forbid 50 some after the massacre, bro, we looking at 50 like he one of the goats. Like,
That is a fact. That's
you
a
know what I mean?
fact. Like if 50 what 50 did, we need to review 50 album. We got to do that.
Oh yeah.
We actually got a request. My boy Adrian actually was like, "Man, y'all ain't did 50. Y'all ain't did a 50 album yet." So we have to do Get Rich or Die Trying or the Massacre, really. But you're right.
Yeah.
After the Massacre, if he had passed after those two classic albums,
Yeah.
he's revered the same way. But a lot of
100.
times you see when you see the trajectory of artists who sometimes either their music isn't received as well, like after 5, 10 years, or they pivot into other things like a 50 Cent did, where he kind of
Yeah.
pivoted out of hip hop. They're no longer revered in that same way. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Hmm.
If
Yeah.
if Most Def dies after Black on Both Sides, how's Most Def looked at?
Right. Like we could play that game all day because there's so many artists that like, and we talked about this off the pod. We talked about whose artists like hit the game hard with like a classic debut album.
Mhm.
And sometimes like they have that lasting star power, but in other times they kind of fall off the grid a little bit. Tupac, like his first album wasn't a commercial boom, like a success per se,
Right.
but you knew he had something there, and then he continued to evolve and get better as an artist in such a short window of time. So we can only imagine what a 40-year-old, 45-year-old Tupac, how what
Man,
music would come out of it, but what he would be as maybe a socially or a social political figure. You know what I mean? There's so many
right.
things to think about. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and and the thing is, it's like you'll never know, and
Yeah.
that's the sad thing about it is with some of those
Mm.
artists, man, you never know because even when you're talking about that's why when I put my top five, top 10 list together
Mm.
and say who falls into that, a lot of people get on me, especially East Coast people, because East Coast people think if you didn't come from New York, you're not important. Arguing with East Coast
Crazy.
people about hip hop is the most frustrating. Let me tell you, okay. I mean, like they stand 10 toes down on their artists. But I've gotten a lot of back and forth because I don't put Biggie in my top five.
I don't
Um,
either.
and a lot of them are like, "What do you mean you don't put Biggie in your top five?" But I'm like, if I'm like, there are so many artists who had better runs, than Biggie. I'm like, but it's not. I know it's not a fair thing to say because Biggie died, so it's like we
Mm.
never got to see what the third, fourth, fifth album would sound like. But I've
Mm.
got to see that with other artists. I've got to
Right.
see what Jay-Z's third, fourth, fifth, sixth album would sound like. So it's like, how can I say that he's better than them when they've made 1,000 songs?
Right.
It's hard to compare the two.
Mm. Facts. Yeah.
Yeah, Bo, I think we made it through everything, didn't we?
Yeah, we made it through everything.
Oh,
Episode 18. Crazy.
episode 18, man.
Yeah.
Another banger. Great discussion and dialogue as always, man. We got to make sure you all are tuned in and locked in on our socials, man. At Rap and Reason on Instagram, Rap and Reason YouTube channel. Make sure you're subscribed. A lot of y'all are listening, but you're not subscribed. I need you to hit that subscribe button. Make sure you're locked in with us. For those of you all who are listening on Spotify, on Apple Music, make sure that you are giving us a review, sharing this with your friends, letting them know, man, this is the dopest music podcast in the game. Y'all just don't, everybody will find out eventually.
Exactly, man. Let's keep the movement going, man, so we can carve out or crank out some more episodes, some more fantastic ones. So let's do it. Yes, sir.
Absolutely. And we just as a book update, man, our book, under the working title, we switched the working title recently. Our new working title is Conscious Rap Lives: How Kendrick Lamar and J. Cole Saved Hip Hop.
Mm.
It's still in progress, man. We working to get into that halfway point, which is
Yeah,
dope.
which is dope, bro. We're getting some more new interviews scheduled, some high profile folks. So we'll keep y'all locked.
Yep, we
Keep y'all
keep you
locked.
posted, man. And we will see you all next week, Rap and Reason. Rap and Reason podcast with Dr. Jeremy C. McCool and Earl Hopkins.